Hey everyone, and welcome back to Country Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We truly appreciate the support. As always, please make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you are listening on, and head over to social media as well so you can stay up to date on all the exciting episodes we have coming up in the future. Today we are sitting down with Hailey Whitters. She released her album, The Dream, back in 2019, which included the single 10-Year Town. Now that song basically told the tale of Hailey, her journey through Nashville. It began back in 2007 when she moved to Nashville with not much more than a dream of being a country music musician. Now after 12 years, which was 2019, she finally started to gain traction with the album and with the single 10-Year Town. Since that time, she has toured with Maren Morris. She has played the Grand Ole Opry multiple times, and big things are set to happen in 2021, including a tour with Midland. It's been a very long journey, but she is finally starting to see a career take shape that she dreamed of back when she first moved to Nashville. So please enjoy our conversation with Hailey Whitters. I want you to take me back to a living room in a trailer in the middle of a cornfield with a little girl singing Shania Twain.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up when I was real young, we lived in a baby blue single wide trailer in the middle of a cornfield. And I would just get on the back of my dad's lawnmower and just ride around and sing songs to myself. Where I grew up, I really only had country radio as kind of my, my source of country music. So I pretty much grew up hearing Shania and Trisha and Tim and Alan Jackson and all of those voices of the 90s. And I kind of had to go do my own digging to find anything deeper than that. You know, my grandma gave me a collection of records she had when I was 15. I had some Johnny Cash and some Eddie Arnold, but I would say it probably wasn't really until I came to Nashville that I started to understand, the songwriters and, digging more into Americana music and that and stuff like that. But early on, it was definitely just what was on the radio in country at the time.
Right. And as far as musical talent in your family goes, you have quite a large family. You're the oldest of 6, are you? Mm-hmm. And then yeah. I saw some pictures from your grandma, and I think you had said your mom is one of 9 kids.
Yeah, so my mom and dad are both one of 9. My grandpa's one of 15. So I come from a very, very big Irish Catholic family. So yeah, it's pretty big, and it's growing up. I would say my family is very creative. There was a lot of creativity in my family, but I don't think anyone ever knew how to apply it to making it a career. So a lot of the men in my family, my mom's dad ran a trucking business, and then my dad's dad ran a sod farm, and all my aunts and uncles grew up working there. And then it would, the aunts would get married and start having kids and raising families and stuff like that. So I don't think anyone ever really got the opportunity to start to try and figure out how to make a career out of being, artistic and creative until probably my generation. And so it was kind of an anomaly that I, from a very early age, was I'm going to move away from everyone I know and everything I've ever known and pursue a career in the music business. I think everyone was kind of what? We didn't know how to do that, and I think it's very unusual probably that I had this blind determination to move to Nashville and to just jump into it. I mean, looking back on it now, it's really bold, and I really can't believe I did that, but I was just really, gung-ho about doing that from an early age.
And as far as the writing, the guitar playing, like you say, none of your family really guided you into that. So what was it and when was it when you sort of guided yourself into both the songwriting and the guitar playing?
Well, When I remember being in elementary school and trying to start a band with, girls in my class. And I went down to the guidance counselor's office one day and I was like, I think he'd come in and talk to us about careers and, just what we want to be when we grow up or whatever. And I went down to his office after that meeting and was like, I want to be a country music singer. And he said, do you write your own music? And I said, no. And he was like, well, who's some of your favorite country singers? And I said, the Dixie Chicks. And he was like, well, do you know that they write their own songs? And so that was the light bulb that went off where I was like, okay, I got to start writing my own songs. And I went home and my mom, she picked up guitar as a child. She never really like stuck through with it, but
Okay.
she kind of helped guide me towards getting into guitar lessons. She bought me a guitar. She actually started taking lessons with me for a while. I remember kind of like this fun mom-daughter thing that we got to do. But she found a guy in Cedar Rapids who taught lessons out of his basement. And I would just go to his house once a week. And he started teaching me enough chords to, write songs to. And I really would just hole up in my bedroom and write songs. I would write my lyrics on my bedroom walls, which did not please my parents, but I just kind of turned my bedroom into like this creative space where I would just sit in there for hours and, fiddle around with my guitar and trying to write things. And I would say that's probably how it started. I think I was about 15 or 16 when I wrote like my first actual song. And, it wasn't long after that I moved to Nashville. And I really think Nashville was kind of like my crash course in songwriting. And I would just, every night I would go out to a writer's round from like 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I just immerse myself in, the songwriter scene around town, just trying to hear, Hillary Lindsey and Lori McKenna, Natalie Hemby and Sarah Buxton, just trying to hear all of these songwriters and learn from them. But yeah, it's been a while, since I wrote that first song in my basement back in Iowa.
And when you were young, like in high school, middle school, like you were all about country, right? Because I saw that you had written a school paper about the Dixie Chicks and how one of them got sick and you had to fill in and become a Dixie Chick. So really your mind was on country music like the entire time, right?
It was always on country music. I used to be even like a little bit in like my one, like that, like kind of emo teenage, sophomore year where like country is just so not cool to listen to. You know what I mean? When you're that age, I would like, my friend would jump in the car and I'd like turn my radio down and play Dashboard Confessional or something and try and be like real cool. But it's always been country for me. It still is kind of just only country. I think a lot of my manager's out of LA and I think he just like rolls his eyes sometimes at how ignorant I am to anything outside of country music. It's kind of always just been what I wanted to do. And, I kind of live in a little bubble, I guess, in that way, whether it's good or bad, but yeah.
And when you went to Nashville, now you attended Belmont, but did you go to Nashville to go to school or did you go just to go to Nashville and the school kind of came after you had already been there for a bit?
So my mom brought me down when I was like 15 and it was my first time being to any kind of city bigger than Cedar Rapids. I'd never even been to Chicago. So I came down and we walked down Broadway and I see all these people busking with their guitars on the street. And we went backstage at the Grand Ole Opry and I was just absolutely smitten, like so blown away, just instantly was like, I'm moving here after high school. I don't care what you say. Like, this is where I'm going to be. And that really scared my mom because I'm like the oldest of 6 kids. I'm her oldest kid. I'm a young, really naive girl who was about to move 9 hours away from anyone that I knew. And I think my mom was just really nervous about that. So she got online and tried finding, schools nearby. And, also kind of oddly enough, like I'm the first person in, my family to ever graduate from college. So I think that was very important for my parents, for me to go to school and graduate because that was something that they didn't get to do. but I pretty much told her, she said, hey, what about Belmont? They have, School of Music, a music business program. What about doing that? And I was like, okay, yeah, I will apply for Belmont and, see if I get in. But just so you know, if I don't, I'm still moving there. And I ended up, it was the only school I applied for. I got in. So I moved down at 17. I really think that, in hindsight, I wasn't ever much of a student, but I do think it was really nice to have, that community, because I just, as ignorant and naive as I was, I mean, I'd probably be, I probably would have left a lot sooner if I didn't have something like school keeping me here.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, it's one thing to have this thought of, I'm going to Nashville, that's what I'm doing. But then there's actually getting there and realizing that you are 9 hours away from everyone you know, and that sort of realization. So what was it actually like when you were dropped off and everyone left and you realized, oh, yeah, I am here now?
I mean, I don't think I missed a beat. Like, the minute my parents dropped me off and left, I got out and walked I didn't have a car, so I walked from Belmont campus all the way to Broadway downtown and started walking in the bars asking for a gig. Like, I really didn't know how the music industry worked. And so I just kind of, came from that whole, like, you want to do something, you got to do it yourself mentality, in the Midwest. And I just started walking in rooms and, I'd sit and watch and I'd wait for the band to get off stage. And then I'd go up and say, hey, I'm Hailey Whitters. I'm a singer songwriter. Can I play here? Who do I got to talk to? And little by little, that just ended up to like me talking to people and meeting people. And, I played down on Broadway for a while. I was playing Tootsies and Rippies, and I'd play out at the airport, and just in between classes, I'd go play music, or I'd go, I think it was like within the first month that I was in town, I got on MySpace, and started looking around at writers venues in town and trying to book writers rounds. And that just kind of domino effect led to me meeting more writers and more artists and people in the industry and all of that. And so I was technically a student, but I was like side hustling, trying to get my music off the ground,
Yeah. And so in 2012, you signed a publishing deal with Carnival Music. Now, how did that come about? Was that basically just from hitting the ground and meeting people and getting to know people?
Yeah, well, actually, oddly enough, one of the first people I met, like one of the first 5 people I met when I moved down here, was a girl named Emily Schiraldi. And flash forward 4 or 5 years later, she ends up getting a job at Carnival, and we just kept in touch. She'd always hear my new music and take meetings and everything like that. And Carnival was like my dream place. I really, really wanted to write for Carnival, but because of our relationship, I didn't want to make it awkward for her to feel like, she had to sign me or something. So right. I just kept doing my thing. And I remember starting to get some activity around town. I'd funded an EP, and put that out and started playing some shows, and it started getting some attention from other publishers in town. And she took me to breakfast one day before my day job, which I was a receptionist at a hair salon at the time. And she said, hey, can we go get breakfast? And she took me out and she sat me down and said, Carnival wants to sign you. And that was just like my ultimate dream gig. I literally was just so over the moon. And, I went into sweep hair that day on cloud 9. I was just so thrilled. I thought, like, this is my big break. I get to write for my dream publishing company. And yeah, it was just great. That happened about year 6. And that was about a year and a half after I'd graduated. And I was just working odd end jobs, to try and be able to keep doing music on the side. So that was a great day.
You mentioned with country music and sort of that being your genre, there is a big community in country music. It feels like a very helpful community. People are there to help you up. So how important has that community been for you over the past 14 years in keeping you motivated and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I can't really speak to other genres. I have no idea like what their culture is like. But in the country music community, it definitely feels like a small town, you know, in that way where it's like everybody knows everybody, everybody's rooting for everybody. You just kind of feel like one big old family, and everyone's happy for your success and for your achievements. And there were, you know, there were definitely years where like I was really frustrated with the industry side of it. You know, I was being told no and I wasn't being taken seriously. And I would say that the thing that really, kept me going and kept me, hopeful and optimistic and encouraged was probably the songwriter community. The songwriter community in Nashville is just one of the best communities, I feel like, in probably any industry. You know, it's just we all write together, we all hurt together, we all cheer together, we all, we celebrate, we commiserate, and it's just like we're all just here for each other. And I think that that is just so rare and so valuable. And I feel like, especially for my music, I went out and played this record, The Dream or whatever. I was knocking on those doors and taking those meetings and playing that music for people. And it was really not until the artists and the writers started championing me that the industry really started taking me seriously, Right. And so, I mean, they're the reason that I get to do this. Marin taking me on tour, Brothers Osborne was posting about the record, Carly Pierce, Lori McKenna, Hillary Lindsay, Nicole Gallion, Brandy Clark, all big writers that were writing with me before I had anything going on. They're incredibly, they're the reason that I've been able to do any of this, and so I just think that the community here is unlike any other, and I really wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it's just the coolest thing to be able to have gotten, my break because of my peers and my collaborators who, even when the industry didn't believe in me, they did. And that is just something that they can't ever take away, Right.
And within that community, like I saw that you had played the Whiskey Jam back in 2015, and I saw on that bill
you were doing some deep dives.
Yes, I was. On that bill was Maren Morris and Ryan Hurd. And yeah. I was wondering, within that community, when you're seeing those people that you're sort of coming up with, when they take off to success, like, how does that make you feel? Are you happy for them? Or is there a side of you that's saying, why them? Why not me? How does that work within that community when you see that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd known Ryan from, Belmont days. So I'd known him, had kind of a relationship with him. We had a lot of mutual friends and stuff, and Marion came to town and she kind of fell into that group too. But I mean, just in general, you see, and you still see it happening, today. Like, you see people just blow into town, and it's almost like overnight, everyone loves them, and and they're getting all these opportunities, and and it's really easy to, like, start to look around at, like, what are they doing that I'm not? Maybe I should be doing this. Maybe I should do that. And I definitely thought those thoughts and tried those things. And I finally came to just a breaking point of, like, look, I can only be me, I can never be, the next whoever female artist. Like, I have to tap into what I bring to the table. What is my experience? What is my voice? And just really just focus on the fans and getting that music out there to them. And you can't sit around and look at everyone else. I mean, do you want to on your really bad days? You want to sit and sulk and get some Chinese food and a bottle of wine and, just like boo-hoo about why it's not happening for you? Like, those are real things. And I think it's really easy to feel that, especially in, a town and an industry that can sometimes make you feel like there's not enough room for everybody, but I think that just makes you bitter, and it's a dead end every time, and so I really just try and focus on myself and, you know, what makes me happy. And then I find that, you know, the more I'm kind of, you know, focused on that instead of what everyone else is doing, the happier I am, and the happier I can be for other people when they start having, you know, success too. And so, yeah.
And 2017, that was right around year 10. And I saw at the end of the year, you posted those thoughts about the frustration of trying to fit in, but be yourself, and the frustration with the business. And I also noticed sort of throughout 2017, it seemed that you were posting less on social media. So talk about 2017 and that year and how you grew throughout that year and the importance of it for driving you forward to what was to come.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if it was 2017 or I think it was 2017. 2018. Anyways, I was it came right after like an experimental phase with me and with my music. You know, I'd been in town for a long time. I felt like a total fish out of water. It was like around the time that like country was becoming very pop influenced, very track influenced. And I came here to write songs like, you know, Alan Jackson and stuff like that. Like I had no business writing pop songs, and I was feeling very uncool, very old, and like just not, you know, just a fish out of water in this town. And so I decided, you know, like the one thing I haven't tried is to be like all of that pop stuff that's like working at country radio right now. So why don't I try some of that and we'll see how it goes. And I did, and I tried it, and I did a little project and started kind of playing it around. And I had my first meeting, and that meeting ended, and I told my boyfriend, Jake, I said, we're not doing any more meetings. Like, I can't sit through that again. That does not feel like me. That just doesn't feel authentic. If that's what Nashville wants, I'm out. It's not for me. You know, and that was like the fuck it point that I say, you know, where I just really let it go, came to terms with it. You know, I tried to be that. It wasn't me. I could not do that. I could not sell it. And so I was just like, I'm just going to reassess. I'm going to put out this handful of songs that I got that I believe in. And, you know, if it fails, it fails, but at least it's me. It's what I want to say. It's what I feel like, you know, my sound is. And so that was probably part of that time. You know, I bet I think that post, I remember making that post, and I think it was very much me kind of like feeling that, like that power back, that strength back. You know, I remember I was just like, you know, I won't say depressed, because I feel like that's probably unfair to people, you know, who are diagnosed with depression. But I was very sad. I was very, very sad. I was sleeping a lot, and I just like, you know, I was really I think I was really grappling with like my time here and what it meant to me, and my feelings of, you know, just feeling like I had not much to show for it. And it was a really low time. But on the other side of that, then you can see me becoming stronger, and me becoming more secure in what I did do, and more confident in what I did do. And so I think you needed both, for sure, to get the dream. You had to have that breaking point to get what is now my record, The Dream. But yeah, I bet that was definitely like a transformation year for me. And that's probably, I specifically remember deleting my social media, you know, and just booking trips and going on trips. And I felt like up to that point, you know, my whole life, it was like, music comes first. Music comes first. I'm not going to go to the grad party. I'm not going to go to the wedding. I'm not going to go to the birthday. I have shows. I can't. I have to work, yada, yada. And that was the year I kind of like put music on the back burner and went out and did those things, you know. And I think that gave me the perspective of just like kind of holistically, like, you know, the Janice thing, go out and make a good living, but don't forget to make a good life. You know, that those years like gave me that perspective, and it just helped me realize how valuable all that stuff is, you know, all the stuff that you kind of put on hold because you're too busy with work, you know, like those are the things that actually made me a better artist, a better writer, you know, because I had all that life to tap into and talk about, you know.
Right. And it was in early 2018 when your boyfriend Jake came to you and said, "Do you want a ring or do you want a record?" Was it instantly a record, or what were
Okay.
your thoughts around it?
Yeah, I mean, totally. We've been together. I mean, I don't think I'm not much of a traditionalist in the sense of, weddings and marriage and, looking at relationships that way. But we've been together probably, I guess at that point, we've been together 6 or 7 years. And, I felt confident in my relationship. And what I really needed right then was, a little extra cash to finish that record with. And so it was kind of a no-brainer. And it was also kind of like a testing period, I guess. Like, let's see if we can get through this very intense record making process, and if we make it, we might have a little bit of a shot and making a go at the ring thing. So
Yeah, because he co-produced the album, right?
he did, yeah.
So what was that like, having this album that I imagine felt like your last shot? Like, this is it. If this doesn't work, then what? And also doing it with someone that you're in a relationship with, you've been for many years. Like, what was the whole emotion while you were doing the project?
It worked really well. Like, there was one time I think I threw his shit out of my car and was like, "Get out, you're fired. We're not working together anymore." But other than that, like, all of those years that we'd had as a couple, as partners in a relationship, he was someone who was jumping in my van with me and my band on the weekends and like going to our shows and helping me TM. And he's always kind of been like a source of advice and guidance and helping me navigate, my career. And so when we decided to make the record, we were both just very ignorant to that whole process. I mean, it was only with the encouragement of my publisher at the time, Frank Liddell, that we even felt at all, like we could potentially produce the thing. So it was really nice to have somebody who also didn't know what he was doing, and he's an avid music fan. Like, he listens to more music than anybody I know, and I trusted his taste and I trusted his vision, and I think he trusted my instincts and my vision, and just kind of, being able to have that relationship together, it was really impactful. And I feel like too, it's like we dated for 6 years. We weren't afraid of hurting each other's feelings, so it's like we would butt heads and respectfully butt heads. It was like, it was always for the betterment of the songs and for making the project the best that we possibly could. But I think that if I'd gone in with, my dream producer, which I honestly didn't even have the money to do, that's kind of why we started making this record together anyways. Had I gone in with like my dream producer, I think, despite all that confidence I talk about, I think I would have been very intimidated to stand up to them and to express myself and to, fight for the things that felt right to me, So I think that relationship that we had, that creative relationship, was really unique and really instrumental to being able to make the record the way we did.
Right. And following the release of 10-Year Town, that was the one to first hit. Now, Maren Morris bringing you on tour was one of the first big moments. Now, was that sort of for you when it kind of clicked in that maybe this music was going to help take you places? Or was there a moment before that where you thought you might have something there?
Yeah, I mean, I think seeing the response of the release, like, because I just dropped 10-Year Town. And I remember seeing a lot of people, a lot of artists reposting about that. And that was kind of a moment that I was like, okay, there might be something here. And then it was probably a month and a half, maybe after that I got the call from Maren. And I think that was the moment that the industry really started to take me seriously, because I mean, she could have had anyone on tour, and she invited me, who had no label, no management. I was waiting tables. I literally just had this little record. And I think that was the moment that the industry started to look at me with some new eyes, you know? And so, yeah, that definitely got the ball rolling.
And then your first time at the Opry, was that the next one that made you realize, oh, wow, like I actually have a career in country music all of a sudden without having to work my day job?
Yeah, I mean, the Opry holds a very special place in my heart and in my journey because, you know, it was the first place and just event that really like ignited the flame in me for chasing country music and for pursuing country music. And then I remember, you know, it was, you know, around that 10-year mark, it was the place that I went back to. I bought a ticket as a fan and sat in the audience, and it was kind of like, you know, that moment of me considering like hanging it up and then going to the Opry and seeing the show and thinking like, you still really want this and you're going to be really disappointed if you quit. So like the Opry has kind of just been like this lighthouse for me, I feel like, throughout my journey. And I mean, I think it's just, you know, the place for country music. It's always been the place for country music, and to me. And so to get to play that is just a huge honor. You know, it was like, I always say, like, if I can just go home and say I play in the Grand Ole Opry, I've made it, you know?
And I don't know if it was your first time playing, but you've played multiple times now, which is awesome. But one of the times you were able to play One More Hell. Now, you lost your brother back in 2011, and you wrote that song for him. Now, throughout the years of sort of not celebrating that anniversary, but having to go through that anniversary of his death, and at that moment, being able to play that song on that stage, what did that mean to you?
It meant a lot. I mean, that song, you know, it just means so much to me. And I've always, you know, the Opry also means so much to me. It's such a holy place. And so to get to sing that song on that stage, it just, you know, I feel like if there's any room that he could hear that song, you know, from, I think it would be that place. And it's just so intimate to me and real and raw. And so I always wanted to play, you know, that song for him. And then, you know, coincidentally enough, on the 10-year anniversary of his death, like, I was playing the Grand Ole Opry. And so it just felt like this weird universe thing where it's like, you know, on a day that usually brings me so much like pain, and I try and tune out and kind of just feel it and sit in it. It was like, you know, the day that I think like after a decade, he was saying like, hey, I want you to smile today and remember me positively. And I think that it's just so bizarre that happened on the same day, and it meant a lot to me to get to do that from that stage.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I've talked to other people who have played the Opry, and they talk about, you know, just some weird experiences that they have with those in their past who are no longer with us, but when they play the Opry, something happens and they just know they're there. So it's just amazing that you were able to do that and finally celebrate him in that way.
I know, it's so weird, so bizarre.
And that song means a lot to you, and you have a lot of songs on the new album that feel very personal. And of course, 10-Year Town is basically about your journey, and it's the song that helped to kick this all off. But as far as the entire album goes, is there one song that really makes you feel a lot more than the others?
Yeah, like they all kind of have their moments to me. I mean, 10-Year Town was definitely like my Nashville story. Heartland is kind of like my return home, back to my roots, back to that grounding place. Janice is the advice that I needed to hear when I wrote that song, and that I still try and keep with me, you know, as I navigate, you know, my career to this day. living the dream is kind of just holistically, I think, the big picture lesson and reminder and advice that I need, like, it can be really easy to, to start to see, work as a paycheck or a means to an end, or, something like that. But I think that it's just important to remember that, like, the very last line of the song, ain't we all down here living the dream? Like, how lucky are we to get to be alive? Kind of going back, I wrote that line specifically for my brother, and I think about people who've left us way too soon, way too early. And I just think that, like, we're so lucky to get to be here, to get to be alive, to get to love and hurt and cry and laugh. And, even beyond music, that's just a universal thing and a universal feeling. And definitely something I always try and remember,
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask, because I heard someone say a couple of weeks ago, a quote sort of that said, it's hard to celebrate something because you work so hard for something, but when you get it, it's just your normal now. And so all of a sudden you're reaching for the next thing because that's just your normal. And so I was going to ask you, with finally achieving this point in your career, have you been able to stop and look at what it is rather than just sort of moving forward and saying, okay, this is my life now, what's next?
Man, I celebrate everything. I celebrate when my singles die at country radio. You know what I mean? When happy people died, I went out and drank tequila. Like, it's just like, I remember when Jake and I were making The Dream, we would go celebrate recording day. We would go celebrate the day we finished the mixes. We would celebrate the day we got the masters back. We would celebrate every single song that got released. Every time I played the Grand Ole Opry, I go straight to the Nashville Palace and get a beer and a cheeseburger. Like, I just think it's important to, and I hope that I always have time for those celebrations in some capacity, because, with everything that happens, with everything that I get to do, I know that it could all end, and I try and have those moments. I remember the first show I played with Martina McBride, I walked out of the venue and I was walking to go get on the bus, and I stopped and I looked up at the sky and the stars were incredible. And I just thought, like, you need to soak this up because you may never get to do this again. And I try and think about that stuff all the time, and just to keep it in perspective. And, if my career was over tomorrow and I had to pack up and go home, I would be so proud of the shit that I did, because everything that I've done is more than I ever thought I was going to get to do, And so, I just try and take as much time as possible to celebrate the little milestones along the way, because, those moments are just so special.
When you look back now on that little 17-year-old girl ready to take the trip to Nashville and all that you have been through, do you take that journey often through your mind?
I really haven't thought about it in a long while. It's like every once in a while I get a little glimpse of that girl again. It's hard to remember that sometimes because it's just like, a time trip almost. But I think that probably the last thing that kind of made me think of that girl was when I got to play the CMT Awards, because I remember coming here, before I'd moved here, and going to those awards and wanting to perform on them someday and to be nominated. And I think, like, she would be surprised herself, as bold and as determined and, just ambitious as she was. I don't know if she ever really thought that it could all happen, and so I think I'm just proud of her, it sounds weird to say, to be proud of yourself, but I'm just proud of her for sticking it out and for finding a place where she can just, be enjoying the ride of it all and, be glad to be here. It's awesome.
That is amazing. And I just wanted to ask you about one more thing, because you have probably seen a lot throughout your years, playing anywhere you could and, doing whatever you could to get on stage. But I saw on social media that you had talked about the brawl on stage in
Where
Macon.
did I talk about that?
It was a social media post where you were like talking about tour life.
That is hilarious. I didn't know that was online. That is so funny. I'm gonna have to go see what I was talking about. So what were you asking? Like what that experience was like?
Yeah, what happened there?
Well, it's a funny story. Actually, my band and I were just like reliving that story this weekend. We were playing a venue and it was just kind of like, one of those 3-hour cover gig kind of sets. There was like nobody in the audience, nobody really cared. And we're on like our last song of our 3-hour set. And this group of like bachelorettes comes up side stage and says, "Hey, if I give you this $100 bill, can we get up and sing a song with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to let you do it for 20, but awesome. Thanks. Sure. Anything you want." So they get up on stage and they're singing White Liar. And before I know it, there's like a 12 chick brawl happening on stage, and there's like microphone like cables being ripped out of mics. My bass player's like throwing his basses back to the drummer to like keep them out of the way. Feedback going. I'm seeing like earrings being ripped, chunks of hair. There was a dude who got on stage to try and break it up, and I saw him get decked in the face. It was like just like the baddest all-girl fight I've ever seen, and it went on for like what felt like almost 3 minutes before finally like multiple dudes got on and broke them up. And I mean, this is kind of gossipy. I don't know who's listening to your podcast, but I hope they don't get mad at me. Anyways, I went to go settle with the bar owner at the end of the night. And I said, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. I kind of felt responsible." And he said, "Oh, honey, they've been waiting for that to happen all night." Apparently the girl who had gotten on stage and started getting beat up on had slept with one of the other like girls' husbands and got knocked up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so they were just like waiting for the right moment to be able to like catch up with that girl, I guess, and beat her up a little bit. But it was one of the craziest stories I've ever had happen to me while being on stage.
That is hilarious. I'm glad I saw that.
I took that $100 bill and went out and bought my band a drink. Like, it was insane.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations on everything. And what tour dates? You're touring with Midland later this year, right? That we can look forward to?
Yeah, so I think I'm doing Faster Horses this weekend. I got some dates with Little Big Town and Luke Combs next month. Playing Bonnaroo in September. And then we start the Midland tour. So yeah, I think I'm booked every weekend from now till Christmas. So we'll be on the road.
That is awesome. And speaking of Luke Combs, you actually toured with him like back in 2016, right?
Yeah, like I remember driving to that show. I was opening for him and I'm like, who the hell is Luke Combs? Like, I have not heard anything about him. But he had packed out every single show I played for him. This was like before he'd even moved to Nashville.
Right.
And I played shows with him, and he would invite me up to sing a song with him every night. And oddly enough, his manager at the time, now my manager as well, Cappy, was like his bodyguard, his van driver, his TM, all that stuff. So it's kind of a weird, again, another weird universe thing that flash forward how many years later, and now we all work together, but yeah, Luke's always been very, very kind to me and very supportive. So
that is awesome. Well, congratulations again. Enjoy the tours throughout the year and all that the year is going to bring you. It's amazing to see what you're now able to accomplish with your music and how you've been able to do it. Like I say, your way, creating the music you want to make and where that's taking you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks for doing this. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you guys once again so much for listening, and thank you to Hailey for stopping by and sharing her inspirational story. Be sure to check out her album, The Dream, wherever you stream your music. Please also make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you are listening on, and head over to social media, give us a follow there as well, so you can stay up to date on all the exciting episodes we have coming up in the future. Thank you so much for listening once again, and we'll see you next time on Country Music Made Me.